All right, so we've kind of neglected this story, but as you might have heard, the Ukrainians have launched an attack on Russia, taking the fight to them for reasons that no one can quite figure out because it's costing them quite a lot for nothing more than perhaps symbolic purposes. Ukraine said Monday it was holding 1,000 square kilometers of Russian territory a week after the surprise cross border assault that left the Kremlin scrambling and saw Kiev seize back the initiative in the war. General Oleksandr Syrsky made the declaration in a video posted to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's Telegram channel Monday. Quote, the troops are fulfilling their tasks. Fighting continues actually along the entire front line. The situation is under our control, Syrsky said. NBC News was not able to confirm how much Russian territory Ukraine's forces hold. Earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin vowed to drive Ukrainian troops from his country's territory, his first major public intervention in the crisis. Battles raged inside Russia for a seventh day following the incursion into the Kursk border region by Ukrainian forces, who appeared to have advanced by up to 20 miles. Residents were also being evacuated from parts of the neighboring Belgorod region in the latest sign that the Kremlin had failed to repel the threat of an intensifying offensive. Speaking at a special meeting dedicated to the situation, Putin ordered his defense ministry to, quote, squeeze out to knock out the enemy from our territories before then solidifying Russia's border defenses. Ukraine's stunning incursion has embarrassed the Kremlin and boosted morale, but left many observers scratching their heads about what Kiev might be hoping to achieve. Putin weighed in Monday, saying the assault aimed to improve Ukraine's hand in future peace talks, ease the pressure on its embattled forces fighting on the front lines, and fuel discord inside Russia. Quote, it appears the enemy is trying to improve its negotiation positions, he said. Russia has been calling for peace talks in recent months, but with the non-starter condition that Kiev cede vast territories Moscow annexed in 2022. Yeah, I think it's going to be a starter pretty soon. The assault is also aimed, he said, at stopping the advance of Russian forces in the east and south of Ukraine. What are the results, he said, sounding irate. All along the contact line, our forces are advancing, he said, claiming the pace of Russian gains had accelerated in the past week. Ukraine had also failed to sow discord and destroy the unity of the Russian people, he added, saying more people have signed up to serve in the army in recent days. Meanwhile, the two sides accused each other of endangering Europe's largest nuclear plant after a major fire broke out at the site. Zelensky shared a video Sunday appearing to show smoke billowing from one of the towers at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. He said Russian forces who have occupied the site since the early weeks of the February 2022 invasion started the fire. Moscow blamed the incident on Sunday on Ukraine. The Kremlin installed governor of the region, Evgeny Belitsky, said on Telegram that a Ukrainian drone hit one of the cooling towers. That sounds a little more likely than that the Russians lit the power plant on fire, frankly. Both Ukrainian and Russian officials have said radiation levels at the plant remain normal. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN's nuclear watchdog, said Sunday in a statement on X that its experts witnessed strong dark smoke coming from the plant's northern area following multiple explosions heard in the evening, but that there was no impact on nuclear safety. You know, they give tours of Chernobyl.
I did not know that, but that does not shock me.
They
It is
do give
morbid,
tours.
but yeah.
I think you're supposed to bring like a radiation detector, like you can only be in there for a certain amount of time. Those are people who feel like they don't need their swimmers anymore.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like you,
I mean,
Keaton.
I could
You
go.
could
Yeah.
you could take the tour.
Be a tour guide. Imagine being a tour guide. Like 4 eyes, Yeah,
Well, you well, you have people who never left.
yeah,
You have people who
yeah.
just stayed there. All right. So, in further developments, it just broke this morning. I thought we should add it on if we're covering this. So Russia has launched their counteroffensive. Russian forces on Tuesday struck back at Ukrainian troops with missiles, drones, and airstrikes in actions that one senior commander said had halted Ukraine's advance after the biggest attack on sovereign Russian territory since the war began. Russia's defense ministry published images of Sukhoi Su-34 bombers striking at what it said were Ukrainian troops in the Kursk border region and said it had repelled attacks at villages about 26 to 28 kilometers, 16 to 17 miles for us Americans who don't know that metric stuff, from the border. Russian forces had destroyed a total of 35 Ukrainian tanks, 31 armored personnel carriers, 18 infantry fighting vehicles, and 179 other armored vehicles during the week long battle, it said. Quote, the uncontrolled ride of the enemy has already been halted, said Major General Apti Aludonov, the commander of the Chechen Akhmat Special Forces Unit. The enemy is already aware that the blitzkrieg that it planned did not work out. The foreign occupation of Russian land was an embarrassment for the army and for Putin. The Ukrainian incursion is the most serious into Russia since the June 1941 invasion by Nazi Germany, which turned on the 1943 Battle of Kursk. President Volodymyr Zelensky told Ukrainians in his nightly address that the operation in Russia was a matter of Ukrainian security, and the Kursk region had been used by Russia to launch many strikes against Ukraine. But by dedicating forces to Kursk, Ukraine may leave other parts of the front exposed, just as Russia has been advancing. Russia, which has a far larger army, could try to encircle Ukrainian forces. Ukraine's Western backers, which have been keen to avoid an escalation of the war into a direct confrontation between Russia and the US led NATO, said they had no prior warning of the Ukrainian offensive. Putin said the West was using Ukraine to fight a proxy war with Russia, and the border incursion was an attempt to undermine Russian domestic stability. Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service said Zelensky was taking crazy steps that risked an escalation far beyond Ukraine's borders. Okay, so yeah, that I believe. I don't think he told the West because they would rather ask forgiveness than permission. I think I one thing Putin didn't say, but who knows what he privately thinks. Whatever you think of Putin, he's no dummy. I think it's a fundraising move. I think they did it to convince the West they're still in the fight and to keep the money and the weapons coming. Because based on both of those articles, yeah, it's flashy. It makes a good headline, but in the end, what it costs them isn't really worth it strategically. If the Russians are advancing, it sounds like he pulled troops from the front lines to do this, but in the end, they they have a population size that dwarfs yours. You cannot win this kind of war of attrition. There is no brilliant strategic maneuver that is going to decapitate Russia and force them into negotiating a peace that is not in their favor. That's just not going to happen.
Well, that's why I think you're right. I think it was a fundraising move, and I think that what they're thinking is the only thing they could possibly be thinking now is, can we drag this out until it escalates to a point where it has to become World War III?
Right. They
Right?
want World
You're
War
just
III.
adding
Right.
time to the conflict in the hopes that something will change. And this is where, like, if you were looking at the election, as you know, at all important, right? This is where Kamala is just uniquely bad. Now, like I said, the people of Gaza have been deprioritized enough that's the issue. I don't give a fuck where you are in anything else. If you're a scumbag on Israel Gaza, you don't get an ounce of support, and you shouldn't. But looking at it objectively, she's easily the worst on this. And this is a big fucking deal, as Joe Biden would say back in his prime, right? I mean, you're talking about stakes that are getting higher and higher every day that this does not end. And this is why, and to take it back to the PMC commentariat, the TYT, like that whole, as RBN so aptly named, the NATO left. The NATO left never had a critique of this, which is just, it's astounding how you could not have a critique of this, because this is the story that just kind of keeps getting worse and worse and worse, little by little by little.
Right.
And with Kamala Harris in there for 4 years, possibly 8 years, I mean, they're talking about funding this 10 years out. Like, Biden and his team are treating this as if it could just go forever, right? Julian Assange, wars are not meant to be won. They're meant to be permanent. They're meant to be endless. Right?
Exactly.
And look, is Donald Trump a man of peace? No. Is RFK a man of peace? No. I'm sorry. If you support the demolition of Gaza, then you're not a man of peace. But there is a little bit of common sense coming from them as far as this issue goes. Trump, not so much anymore. I think Trump has basically caved to, well, we just want the money back, right? That's his position on this now. So look, it's hopeless all around, and I don't want to suck people into weighing their options in terms of who to vote for. You shouldn't vote for any of them. But it is amazing and depressing to think that a Kamala Harris administration would just keep the foot on the gas, not all the way, because we don't want to get lured into World War III. We just want to get our people paid.
Right.
The Ukrainians, who are so deluded as to think they might actually win, they're the ones who want to escalate this. And one false move, one hitting the gas too hard, you could have a situation of widespread irreversible damage.
Yes. Russia, in the end, will not be assuming Western powers came in or NATO came in. If there is anything history has shown us, is that Russia will not be invaded and occupied by a foreign power,
right?
No matter what the cost. This is a country that burned down its capital to deny shelter to Napoleon's troops.
Right.
That is the national character. You are not going to invade and occupy Russia. So what's the end game here? You're in the end going to have to negotiate peace. And they're not going to give up that 1/5 of Ukraine that they have now. So how many Ukrainian lives do you want to sacrifice to end up in the same place? How many Western lives, if you decide to invade, are you going to sacrifice for this? For who? For who? Who's this benefit?
Please clap.